Welcome back to Maximum News, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, as always, your friendly neighborhood Simpsons kin, Maximilian Danger Derrat, and I'm joined as always by
Sybsidian of the Triple S League.
There he is, and we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. A lot of, we actually have a little bit of positive news. Unfortunately, it's going to be a lot of, unfortunately, really dramatic news, but important news that we got to talk about. I guess, we'll just get the worst news out of all of them, arguably the worst. It's the one that at least hit me personally the most, and then we'll move on to the other stuff. So, Syb, when it comes to video games, there are certain performers that are so married to a particular role, or so identified with a particular role or franchise. You think about Michael Ironside voicing Sam Fisher from Splinter Cell. You think about a more recent one like Christopher Judge playing Kratos in God of War. Obviously, one of the big ones is David Hayter playing Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid. There's a lot of people like that, like people that are really, really good at voice acting, but there's only like a couple of handfuls of people that do their job so well and so iconically that people recognize them for generations after they initially started performing the role. And for myself personally, one of those, aside from maybe David Hayter, who I think is still my favorite, the only other person that would sort of come close would be James McCaffrey for all the work that he did in the Remedy games. So in case people don't know, James McCaffrey, he was responsible for, I think he was most identifiable with the character of Max Payne. That was the first time he voiced a character in a Remedy game back in 2001. But he also did the voices of other characters in those games. He played the character of Thomas Zane in the original Alan Wake. He played Zachariah Trench in Control. And he also played Alex Casey, most recently in Alan Wake 2, which released back in October. Every time he appeared in those games, it was as expected, yet as welcomed as hearing the voice of Steve Downes whenever you play a new Halo game when he voices Master Chief, right? It's just okay, I'm home again. I know I'm in for something badass, unless we're talking about Halo 5, of course, but you get my point. But yeah, that was what James McCaffrey was. Anytime I heard his voice in a Remedy game, it's okay, I heard his voice, I'm settled in, I'm game, I know what I'm about to see is awesome, because this guy is awesome, and any game he's ever been in is awesome. And I was never disappointed. Unfortunately, I'm bringing this gentleman up because I learned yesterday that he passed away at the age of 65 from cancer. Nobody knew this. It was a very, very well kept secret from the media, and thank goodness he was able to die, I imagine, surrounded by family and friends, and not have any media attention drawn towards it. It's a really big shame. This man has been a part of my life since the age of 9, when I first played the first Max Payne game on the original Xbox. His was a voice that, sort of like David Hayter for Solid Snake, had this really just, you knew when you hear it that the guy was cool. Whatever character he was playing was cool. He just had this gravelly, terse, texture to his voice, while also very, very witty. His characters were a lot like Solid Snake in that regard, and because of that, it's people who always try to imitate Solid Snake, I would always try to imitate his characters for that same reason, just to amuse myself, obviously, but just because you wish you had a voice that was that cool. You wish you had a voice that you could read something as benign as a Chinese takeout menu and make it sound incredibly dramatic. That was what James McCaffrey's voice did, and thankfully it was also backed up by tremendous acting skill. And it's a real shame that we lost him. He's one of my favorites, and yeah, I kind of broke down when I read the news yesterday. I put up a tribute on my YouTube community page and on Twitter, and people, responded well to it. And a lot of people were posting tributes of their own, their fond memories. It was just a great outpouring of love, and such a talent. And it's very, very sad to see him go. So yeah, that was my personal tribute. Syb, I don't think I've ever talked to you about whether or not you played any of the Remedy games. Did you ever play Max Payne or Alan Wake or Control? And if you did, what did you think of James's performances?
One of my, not one of my early game memories, but like a gaming memory that I share with my brother is playing through the first Max Payne that was on PC. And the jokes that we had about it, because it was like, he takes painkillers, and my brother always said that he thinks that the hidden plot of the story is that the story happens, but only the first like hour, then the rest of it's just a hallucination in his bed because he's OD'd on painkillers.
I mean,
so it's one of those things that, like, I think for a lot of like old school people who play a lot of the older, really, really early 90s and 80s games, it's like there are certain voice actors that got into it at an early time and did really great work and then stuck with it, which is always nice to see, because we don't always have that. Sometimes in there's a couple of games that, like Jagged Alliance 2, for example, where it's like they had great voice acting, but none of those people stuck in the voice acting roles and reprised roles over and over and over again, to the point where they were kind of like the voice is well known. And like you said, Kratos is another good example of that, where it's like, he is the character.
Well, Christopher Judge replaced another guy, right? Mm-hmm. Was another guy before him? Yeah. And it's so interesting, like with David Hayter, like even somebody as iconic as him, he got replaced by Kiefer Sutherland, and Michael Ironside, he got replaced by a couple people after him as well. But James McCaffrey, from 2001 to 2023, he was in every single one of Remedy's games because he was irreplaceable.
Yeah, solid voice, and that's it's like I couldn't imagine them replacing the voice of Optimus Prime, and
Peter Cullen.
Yeah, and it's like, and you have that kind of hook there, and that's kind of an important bit, like always an important bit for the James Perlman, who does the intro to Fallout. It's like that's been there for a really long time, and we kind of hope that it kind of sticks. I know he's been doing other things recently, but yeah.
There's just certain voices that, like, maybe only like 2 or 3 that have ever existed, that just embody the role so well that no matter what you do, it's just, you can never find anybody to top it. James Earl Jones is Darth Vader. Anytime they do a Star Wars movie in the future, if they have Darth Vader, they have to do like an AI version of James Earl Jones, right? It's just, he's too identified with that role, I think. Yeah. And James McCaffrey, like, I mean, we'll talk about maybe in the future how they're going to handle his passing, but right now let's just, do the human thing and the right thing and just mourn his loss and celebrate all the wonderful performances that he got. It's going to be hard, though. I'm sorry. It's going to be hard playing because I want to play
future titles. Yeah,
it's going to be hard.
Or the older titles. Yeah.
Well, no, it's just because I want to play Alan Wake 2 again, because New Game Plus came out, and apparently there's some changes when you do a second run through of it. But just hearing his voice again is going to be hard. But yeah. Anyways, did you guys grow up with James like I did, playing the Remedy games? What are your memories? We'd love to hear them in the comments section below. Okay. Let's go on to, man, we got a lot of really huge news to get through. This one I cannot wait to talk to you about, Syb. It's about one of our favorite developers, Naughty Dog. More so just one of our favorites to talk about because there's always some scandalous discussion that happens around it. So we learned today's December 19th. That's the day that we're recording this. We learned on the 14th that the long-awaited Last of Us Factions, that's the Last of Us live service multiplayer, has been officially canceled. Now, before we get into like how that announcement was made and the reasoning for it that was given, I think it'd be worthwhile to go over some of the events that led up to this moment just to provide some context. So, first of all, I think it should be mentioned, over the last 3 or 4 years, people have criticized Naughty Dog, probably more so than in their entire career, for sometimes legitimate reasons, sometimes not. One thing that I think they should definitely be given continuous credit for is that when they put out a multiplayer mode in their single-player games, notably Uncharted and the first Last of Us, they tend to be better than they have any right to be. Like, they are surprisingly good. Like, even to this day, from what I understand, people still play the crap out of the Last of Us 1 factions just because of how it added an innovative take on, traditional shooting multiplayer modes, and people loved it so much that they stuck with it for almost a decade. Now, their latest offering, The Last of Us Part 2, which came out in 2020. Oh, gosh, that was over 3 years ago? Are you kidding me? Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, it was supposed to actually have factions too, like its own form of multiplayer. That was confirmed back in 2018. But then obviously, as we got closer to The Last of Us Part 2's release date, it was announced that it wouldn't be coming out with a multiplayer mode, but that a multiplayer mode would sort of take on its own thing. And it would become the multiplayer mode. So now, fast forward to 2022 at Summer Game Fest. Neil Druckmann, one of the creative forces behind The Last of Us, actually talked about what the game would end up being. He actually shared concept art of like two people overlooking a ruined cityscape. And, ever since that details were coming out, that it was sort of going to be like the Naughty Dog's answer to the live service fad that has sort of gripped the gaming industry for the past few years. Well, sadly, yeah, but anyways, then we go fast forward a year past that, because I think Summer Game Fest takes place in June. So now we're going to May 2023, so 11 months. Bloomberg put out a report saying that Bungie, Bungie and Naughty Dog sort of operate under Sony's banner. So they always had people talking back and forth with each other. And they had Bungie, who is obviously famous for Destiny 2, one of the greatest live service games, both in terms of, I guess you could say, quality and also just in terms of popularity. They wanted to bring in people from Bungie to look at what Naughty Dog was trying to set up with The Last of Us Factions 2 to see if it would work well as a live service game alongside Sony's other live service games. And Bungie said, you guys need to do some serious work. So what they decided to do instead was, okay, well, we're going to put this on ice for now, and then we'll reconvene and figure out if we can actually come back at this and make it work the way that we want it to. Well, now it's December of 2023, and 5 days ago, as I just said, Naughty Dog put out a public statement on their website saying that it was going to be canceled. And the reason that they gave for why they decided to cancel it was they figured they only had two choices in front of them. They could either put their entire Naughty Dog team behind this live service game, which is what they figured they would have to do in order to be able to support it properly in order for it to function long-term as a live service game, or they can choose to do single-player game experiences going forward. Now, obviously, they decided to choose the latter option, and I think I can speak for Syb and myself when I say I'm glad. However, it does make me wonder why the hell they didn't figure this out like 2 or 3 years ago, or 4 years, however the hell long this concept has been baking at the back of their minds that they would need to do this, and then now they're just deciding to cancel it. I don't know what the hell they're thinking. So that's all the news that we got. Syb, I'm very, very curious to hear your thoughts on all this. What do you think was going on behind the scenes?
I'm going to try to be nice.
Big emphasis on try.
I'm going to try to be nice. I have not been a fan of Naughty Dog in general since their first Last of Us game. Not like shortly after that, like shortly before the second one. Leadership and a couple other things, just I don't like it. I don't like the direction they're going, and I really don't like the the way that they kind of like piece things together, essentially.
Yeah.
And I mean, the amount of staff that they burn through is on the ridiculous side. Like it truly is ridiculous how many people they just burn through in the industry. Yeah, so lots of problems with it.
And sorry, just to interrupt you very quickly. I completely agree with you. I will still say though that some of the stuff that they do, technically speaking, is state of the art in the games industry. But as far as everything that you're saying about the way that the companies run, yeah, totally agree with you. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, and the problem that we have here is just an emphasis that this is an ongoing problem with them, and that the direction that they're going in, up until this point, and we'll see if things change a little bit, is and it's weird because you say, and rightfully so, that you point out it's like, wow, these guys really do push the bar and push the other studios to try to do better in some respects. In other respects, it's a travesty how backwards they are.
Yeah.
And this is again, this is an example. And again, this isn't the only studio to do this. I need to make that clear. It's like when I'm talking about this, I'm talking mostly from the standpoint of the industry as a whole. There's been just with the live service, there is like one way to do it, and that's what everybody tries to emulate. And it's so funny because it's like, yeah, they pulled in Bungie that's made one of the best live service games there is, and who is currently hemorrhaging users because it's just formulaic. There's nothing new, different, or interesting, and a lot of those people from there naturally were a part of Activision very recently, where Activision set the standard for formulaic live service games, and repetition and copying and just that kind of the same thing over and over and over and over again. And of course you've seen that in like World of Warcraft is a great example of Activision taking over Blizzard and then doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it wasn't until this last expansion that it basically, like the one before the current one, where it caught up with them, that and all their other failures, and now is like, this is terrible. Like, this needs to be fixed. This needs to be stopped. And that's what this emphasizes, is that the industry only sees one way to do a live service. And then that's it. And everybody has to repeat, copy, and paste the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And with other games and with other studios, especially indie studios, we're seeing a complete shift in that regard, because we're starting to see things that are like challenging that perspective. It's like, you don't have to do everything the same over and over and over again. Excuse me. And so, yeah, this is the same kind of thing here. And I point out that this is a problem with leadership. I've had a big issue with leadership there for a long while. It's no secret. And I think that it's clear because at the beginning of the project, if you sat back and said, hey, we're going to do a live service game, you would have said, what does everybody else do to maintain a top live service game? And then you would have looked and you would have seen and done, any cursory amount of like investigation into it. You would have realized that you need a team of like literally like 1,000 to 2,000 people. That's just to start.
And that's not Naughty Dog.
Yeah, and that's Naughty Dog couldn't even if they wanted to, couldn't even hire that many people from the games industry, because as we've said on the show before, and some breaking news in the past, now it's better now obviously, but at the time, especially in the last like 4 years, it was like, do not work for Naughty Dog. It will kill your desire to make games. And again, they're not the only studio that has that warning. A lot of people say that about EA. A lot of people say that about Activision. A lot of people said that about Blizzard. And I mean, the messes at Blizzard we saw very distinctively. We're hearing that right now about BioWare, which is another sad, terrible thing. But yeah, it's like over and over and over again, these same problems, because the leadership apparently, without sitting down and having a vision on how to completely come at something like this anew with a completely new idea, a completely new concept, saying, no, we don't need 4,000 people to make this live service game. What we need a dedicated group of a small number of people to create something that people will be interested in. And again, all you have to do to look at that is you just look at any of the Vampire Survivor type games, this brand new genre, and go, what are they doing? And can we do something similar with a small team? And it's crazy because it's like I follow so many small projects and so many like single or small team developers. And one development company, as they started out with just one guy, he had a vision, and that soon grew to 4, and then that stayed there until they really proved themselves, and now they're up to almost 23 staff. And it's like, that's amazing. That's so good. What are they doing different that these big companies can't replicate? And it's the assumption that you have to do everything exactly the same as it's been done because that's the rules. And it's just kind of like silly. I mean, you shake your head at it, you're going, why is this like this? This doesn't make any sense at all. Why repeat something that arguably is, and right now, especially now, like 2 years ago, you could even start to see this. Live services starting to drop off a cliff.
Yeah.
To the point where the packs and everything, it's like, no, you get the monthly pack, right? You get the $7.99 monthly pack. It unlocks everything. It unlocks this, it unlocks that, does this for you. You get all this cool stuff out of it. The $200, $400 packs, those are for super whales or Saudi princes. You're not in that class. You're not in that group of people.
Right.
You don't have the disposable money to blow $1 million on Diablo Immortal. It's so crazy because it's like I know of like 4 people who play Diablo Immortal. One's a really rich streamer who was really rich to begin before he started streaming. The other 2 are 2 Saudi princes that I've heard of. And then the other one is Elon Musk. It's like, you're not going to win a spending war against those 4 people.
Yeah.
Like you're just not. And that's the thing, but it really is on its way out. It's declining. The only games that can maintain it right now, and there's lots and lots of live service games, smaller from like small like AA and smaller AAA studios that are just dying. I mean, look at Babylon's Fall, look at a whole bunch of these other games that have just absolutely tanked this year, and we're starting to see that. They've had to completely go back and redesign the Suicide Squad game, right? Because they were like, these numbers are not good.
Well,
it
wasn't that though.
Redesigning
it wasn't. Yeah, it's not redesigning it though. Like
they're changing the weapons and they're changing the way that the microtransactions work. That's what I heard.
Okay, well, fair enough. But the foundational gameplay is still pretty much the same.
Yeah. No. But
okay, gotcha.
You're redesigning the systems that feed the live service, and that's the thing where it's like, again, it's like if Naughty Dog was serious about this, they would have realized that A, they couldn't compete at that level, and B, maybe they should just try their own thing like they had done with the original Factions game and try to like tweak out the concepts of it to make it so that it was less live servicey, less demandy on their staff, and something that was maybe a lot easier to do. And again, we can point to literally hundreds of individual games, small developers, where you can work around this. A great example of this is is one of OTK's newest. It's their first official game that they're publishing, and that is oh dear, I forgot the name of it. Let me pull it up here. It's Picnic something. Picnic something. I know it's in here. Okay. Something Picnic. But this one is it's the same concept as I was talking before, the kind of like the Vampire Survivors. And you just go crazy with the power-ups. Every time you get it, you get more power-ups, and you get Atomic Picnic, that's what it's called. And it's a great feeling game. It feels good. It plays fun. It's really smart, and it's made by a very, very tiny studio. And it's just you put your head you put your head in your hands and you go, why on earth are they trying to compete with these big boys instead of just creating something new? Because I guarantee you, if you create something small, tiny, and new, like a great example, this is the Fallout Shelter game. It's like that doesn't require tens of that doesn't require 2,000 staff to keep that game running. That was a side project done by like 50 people at the studio. It's like, holy crap. Like, and that game's made so much money. It's ridiculous. I think it's made over almost $1 billion now. And again, it's like, why aren't they trying something new? And that's the problem. That's the problem with AAA as a whole. It's the problem with Naughty Dog and the current studio heads that they have, because they immediately said, what does Bungie do? As if they could compete with Bungie, or as if Bungie was the savior of the current landscape of gaming, which it's not, because of all the issues that they're having.
As if The Last of Us and the way that The Last of Us world is set up is conducive to a live service model like Destiny, which it's not. It's not. All they had to do is give us, I don't know, like a 35 to 40 hour multiplayer experience. It's like I'm saying, they have to do. But, just in comparison to something like a live service game, which would be much worse, do something like what Remnant 2 did. Give us the ability to play co-op and go up against, well, no, I don't think you can go up against other players. But if you have that added element, just something like that, that's smaller, a little bit more of a AA effort, but fun enough that it can please the pre-existing and a huge fan base for The Last of Us, and then use that as a way to build up to the future where maybe you could do something not predatory like most live service games are, but to that kind of scale. Maybe you could do something like, I don't know how, because again, I don't see how The Last of Us world would enable that. But maybe, I don't know, maybe something that kind of like what The Day Before was trying to promise. But
there's hundreds of different ways that they could have gone. They could have gone kind of like you look at some like small studio games that have huge audiences and primarily a PvP light, very light, and I want to heavily emphasize that light, but light-sided, microtransactions, and that would be things like Northgard. Northgard, you pay for a clan every time it comes out. They've got another shop thingy for mobile stuff, but it's really just the clans. Every time a clan comes out, we drop another $5-10 on it. And then the same thing with one of Paradox's other games, Stellaris, where it's like, again, Stellaris comes out with a big free patch, then a paid DLC, then a big free patch, then another DLC, then a big free patch and another DLC. Now, it's if I'm going to tell you, hey, you should play Stellaris, I'm going to tell you, wait for a sale, because buying everything in the Stellaris package is like, it's a couple $100.
Sure.
But again, it's like they're not the only people to do that successfully. There's a train game. There's of course the flight simulators. All of them have these similar kind of concepts. And again, these are from a wide variety of studios that are making this stuff. But the one thing they have in common is that none of those are massive studios with 10,000 employees. They're small studios, often operating less than 300 employees, or in some cases operating with less than 100.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what you could have easily have done.
Yeah, if you were realistic and had imagination.
Yes, exactly. But those are two things that do not currently exist in the head of that studio.
Right. Well, I like to think that maybe they could still eke out is decent single player games. Although if the structure of the stories is mainly decided by Neil Druckmann, I do have significant doubts that is going to continue in their future games. We'll see. I don't. Let's see. There were 7 years between Last of Us 1 and Last of Us 2. It's currently 2023. Are we going to have to wait until 2027 before we get Last of Us Part 3? Or like...
I was joking with Mooney about this just yesterday. I said, "Oh yes, we're gonna get the announcement that they're doing the remake for Last of Us 2, and then we're gonna get another announcement for the new remake of Last of Us 1, and then we're gonna get the new remake of Last of Us 2."
Yes, the new Last of Us Part 1, Scott Pilgrim edition.
Yeah. So I mean that's kind of like how I feel about it. And again, I'm very jaded, and I don't mean to put a damper on other people's fandom.
Sure.
I understand that it's a popular thing, and I do believe that The Last of Us Part 1, the first story, was marvelously well written, and the show has been extremely well adapted. There's of course minor gripes and minor issues and stuff like that, but overall it's an IP that I think deserves a little bit of a better leader, but I don't think any of the people that were involved in the past would like to come back again, especially if they still have to answer the same person. So
sure. I'm sort of right there with you right now, man. We'll see. We'll see if the single player experiences that they're going to focus on will sort of return them to their former glory. But until the games come out, I'm not really going to maintain much excitement. But yeah, that's that. But anyways, moving on to another piece of unfortunate news at a game developer that I kind of worship at the moment, and a lot of gamers worship, is Insomniac. For roughly 3 decades, this game company has been cranking out nothing but quality as far as I'm concerned, ever since the original Spiral games, which I love to pieces. Insomniac has just been knocking it out of the park. They've done Ratchet and Clank. They obviously did the most recent Spider-Man games and the dreadfully underrated Sunset Overdrive, which I actually own a copy of on the Xbox One. And I didn't finish it, but I did enjoy playing what I did. Well, something really huge happened this past week, Side. You know, there have been several instances where game companies have been unfortunately hacked and had their contents leaked. I think up until this past week, the biggest one that you could arguably say happened was the one that happened to Rockstar back in 2022 when details regarding GTA 6 got leaked. Well, it looks like what just happened to Insomniac this week might give what happened to Rockstar a run for its money, because this is huge, Side. And it's really unfortunate because, like I said, Insomniac, I love them, and I love everything that they do. And this, you know what really pisses me off, Side? These people, I'll just say this first of all. Insomniac got hacked by a ransomware group. They were demanding $2 million from, well, not $2 million, but 50 Bitcoin, which roughly translates to $2 million. And they said if their demands weren't met, they would release 1.67 terabytes of data that they stole from Insomniac. Now, before I go into more of like what the details were, I just got to say this. You know, I don't advocate hacking, obviously, at all. But these groups exist where they do ransomware and stuff. Why can't they hack like corrupt politicians and crap?
Because and here's the honest answer.
Yeah.
If you hack a company or a medical company or an oil pipeline company or a grocery chain or whatever, you're probably going to get some money out of it potentially. It's kind of like a 50-50, coin flip as to whether or not you'll get anything out of it. You'll certainly be able to sell a bunch of the data into private hands and stuff like that. If you hack a politician, especially a politician who's been in the game for a very long time, you won't just have law enforcement breathing down your neck. You'll have Black Hawk helicopters, landing in your backyard and educating you in the ways of find out.
Yeah.
And that is unfortunate because in a lot of cases, there's a lot more corruption to be ousted. I mean, there's a certain client list that's been, hasn't been outed at all.
Oh, I've heard about that. Yeah, it's coming.
it's not the client list that's coming. It's a different list, and we'll see if that actually leads to anything at all. Okay. I kind of think it's going to be a bit of a nothing burger because they're going to release things like, oh yeah, this is the guy who fueled up the jet. Like, why do we care about that? Here's a guy who was a lawyer intern at a place that did business with him slightly.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. But yeah, anyways, we're being sort of vague about that. But to bring things back,
we don't want to get into it. But
for the record, I don't.
That's why.
Yeah, you're right. And for the record, I don't actually advocate that happening to anybody, including politicians. I'm just saying if it's going to happen, that would be the one group that I would want it to happen to. But you get what I'm trying to say. But anyways, back to Insomniac. According to Ars Technica, the contents of this hack include, and I quote, assets and story spoilers from unreleased games, a roadmap of upcoming titles, internal company communications, employees' personal data such as passport scans and compensation figures, and much more, end quote. Now, Syb, I don't want to refer to very specific details regarding the leaks, but I am going to refer to some of the general bullet points, and here's why. It's just because mainstream media outlets all over the place, including Ars Technica, including IGN, including Kotaku, they're all talking about this. So the information is out. It's just a sad fact of the situation. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to talk about, I will talk about the general pieces of information that we received, and then we'll discuss it. But before I do, I just want to reiterate, I condemn all this happening. I condemned it when it happened to Rockstar as well. And I condemn it when it happened to Capcom just very recently. It all sucks. Companies that work long and hard on these projects should be able to reveal them when they want. But now that it's out there, I do think it's worthy of discussion. So here are the very basic things that got revealed. Obviously, the big game that everybody is now waiting for from Insomniac, now that Spider-Man 2 is out, is Wolverine. Everything you can imagine, Syb, that could be leaked about this game got leaked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and everything. And I won't say exactly what. If you're absolutely desperate to know, you can go look it up. But everything did. And we'll sort of refer in vague terms to what those things were and our thoughts about it in a second. A couple other things. This one's a little bit obvious. Obviously, we knew we were going to get a new Ratchet & Clank game. Obviously, we know that Spider-Man 3 is going to come out in about 4 years because Spider-Man 2 came out in 2019, and then it was 4 years between that and Spider-Man 2, which released just a couple of months ago. So obviously in 2027, we're going to get Spider-Man 3. No big shock there. Here's a couple, the two most interesting things. Well, actually, no, there's three interesting things I want to bring up. So after Spider-Man 1 came out, we got Spider-Man Miles Morales. It was sort of an in-between game that people could bite their teeth into just to bridge the gap between that game and Spider-Man 2. It was pretty good. I played Miles Morales. It was enjoyable. Questions have been going around about whether or not something similar would happen between Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3. Well, it looks like we're getting a Venom game. Cool. Very, very cool. Probably going to be around 8 to 10 hours like Miles Morales was.
It's going to be great. I can't wait to run around and eat random people.
Yes, I think, couldn't you do that in the Ultimate Spider-Man game from 2005? I don't remember, but anyways. Yeah, but that'd be cool. That'd be cool. And then finally, this is obvious. I think the biggest piece of news that got revealed. Before the end of the decade... Well, no, sorry. There was one other thing I was going to talk about before I get to that. It appears that for Spider-Man 2 and maybe future games like Wolverine and the other project I'm going to talk about in a second, there's going to be a multiplayer component. Releasing in 2024, there's going to be some sort of multiplayer component for Spider-Man, which I can only assume means that there's going to be co-op where you can play as both Spider-Man and Miles Morales.
So the rumors I heard were true then.
Really?
Or at least remember didn't I say it on the show where I was like, yeah, we've heard rumors about multiplayer for Spider-Man 2.
Well, I know we did hear rumors, but then Insomniac came out and said it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But this contradicts that.
I'm going to try to not use bad words. Don't use bad words. Sorry. Don't. Those B words. How dare they lie to us again?
Yes, but
why?
You know what? It's okay because I'm happy that this is something that I wanted from the game, and if we're getting it, awesome. It just makes me love Insomniac even more. Mm-hmm. And then if I didn't think I could love Insomniac anymore after that, there's this next piece of news. Syb, before the end of the decade, it looks like we're getting an X-Men game from Insomniac. An X-Men game from Insomniac? Are you kidding me?
I'm just hoping that because I've seen some of the new stuff that they have for like the X-Men reboot that they're doing with and it doesn't look good. It's like every character's been changed or altered in some way and yeah, it's not
talking about the animated show that's coming out?
No. There's a new live action that's been teased, and first initial results from it were like, ooh, this doesn't look good.
Oh, are you talking about like that thing at the end of the most recent movie that came out?
No. Well, I mean, there's that. Like, we know that it's in production.
Yes.
But some leaks came out about the production and like some supposed like script stuff and some like alterations of characters. So like almost every character has been like changed significantly.
Okay.
Like some characters were just deleted and then their powers were given to other characters.
Wait, okay, you need to tell me about this later, but
yeah. So I mean, and again, I'm hoping that in this particular case, it has nothing to do with the movie series.
No, it won't.
The previous one. So that's my hope. I hope that they like, and again, yes, it's my childhood, but I really, really did like the X-Men cartoon from like the from the 90s. Yeah, exactly. I mean, every once in a while I meet guys at work or like traveling or whatever, and we talk about it, and sometimes I ask is like, or I'll hum the tune or whatever, or I'll point to an X on the floor and be like, oh look, X-Men, and they go, yeah, that was my childhood. I remember growing up watching that every Saturday morning. It was the best thing ever. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, can't find anything that's got that level of quality to it, because it really was. It was a big cast, huge cast, right? Yeah. And that's the thing that's cool about the X-Men is it's a massive cast of people, and the characters were all important, and they all had a thing to them, a story, a background, and it was honestly some brilliant writing, and I really did like that. So fingers crossed that they do it right and they be more like that than they be more like Disney, because Disney kind of crap it.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody's heard my trust in order to be able to handle a whole bunch of Marvel characters correctly, it is Insomniac, because Spider-Man 1 and 2 is just it is quintessential Spider-Man, and all the characters that are surrounding them, Mary Jane not included. But like, when has Mary Jane ever been like that great of a character outside of the comics, maybe in other forms of media? Yeah, I trust them wholeheartedly to be able to handle the X-Men. The question is, though, how are they going to handle the X-Men? Is it going to be like a co-op game where multiple people can play a bunch of X-Men and go in and fight a whole bunch of bad guys? Will it be like sort of what we originally wanted Marvel's Avengers to be when Crystal Dynamics was working on it, but they don't end up messing it up? Will it be like focusing on multiple stories and a single player campaign? I don't know. I don't care. It's Insomniac. They're going to make it work. They rock. They've yet to disappoint me in the last 25 years that they've been putting out video games. Oh my God, I cannot wait for this. But it's going to be 6 years from now until we get it. But hey, at least we got Spider-Man 3 and Wolverine in between then, and we can get hints at what's going to happen. Yeah, so I'm pleased as punch about all these basic announcements. And without going into specifics, I'll just say that for like some of the, I'm assuming it's a lot of pre-alpha stuff. Some of the stuff looked finalized from the leaks that I saw in regards to Wolverine. But for the most part, it's stuff that I sort of expected from a Wolverine game, but that's fine. It's totally fine. They did what I wanted, and made it look awesome. And there's one other thing I want to say. Yeah, I think I can say this. The Wolverine game, the one thing I was sort of wondering whether or not they would go whole hog on is the violence. Because, Wolverine, because he has claws that can slice through people's bodies, you have to ask whether or not they're going to go like full M-rated with Wolverine, or they're going to sort of do what they did in the movies where, they have Wolverine shanking people, but you don't see blood for the most part.
Yeah.
They're doing blood, man. They are doing blood.
I hope so.
No, they are. They are. That's what they're doing. Yeah, well, and I'm glad. Well,
I think I've mentioned to you before that one of my favorite comic books, like single issue comic books, is an episode of Wolverine and Witchblade in which they get married.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, I mean, it's full of blood and gore and people getting chopped up and stuff, and it's just like, and I've always loved that. Yeah, and it's like I think that's the only hard copy comic that I actually own still. Everything else has either been given away or I've lost over the years. So, but yeah, I really like that, and I hope so, because like, comics need teeth and need to talk about that kind of stuff. Sometimes talk, sometimes show, sometimes, interact. But like, yeah, you need teeth in stories. Otherwise, and this is why Game of Thrones was so good, right? Because it had teeth for days until till the TV crew kind of messed it up.
Yeah, it had teeth.
I messed it up in the last season.
Yeah.
It had teeth, but it was Starbucks teeth and bad extras or bad directors and stuff. So I don't want to poke too much fun at that. Right. But yeah, this is a good sign. I will cross my fingers and hope.
Yeah. So that's the general information. If you guys want to look up the extra details, do so. Whatever you want to do, we're not here to judge. I mean, I already looked it up myself. But of course I do condemn what happened to Insomniac, and as much as it sucks, I hope Insomniac realizes just how much people love them and how respected they are for being one of the best game developers in the business, and I will continue to buy their games because they have never disappointed me. All right, let's move on to this next piece of news. I wasn't expecting this to happen. Like, I guess I should have, because there were talks about it a while ago, but now it's just officially confirmed. It looks like we're getting a Death Stranding movie, Syb. Obviously, Death Stranding, created by my favorite game developer of all time, Hideo Kojima, the GOAT. He's also responsible for my all-time favorite game series, Metal Gear Solid, which I wish we were getting something regarding Metal Gear Solid before we got something from Death Stranding, but whatever. It's being done in collaboration with A24, which is a production and distribution movie studio that is responsible for some of my favorite movies of the last 10 to 15 years. They put out all of Ari Aster's films, like Hereditary, Midsommar, and most recently Beau is Afraid, all of which are fantastic. Hereditary is like one of a handful of movies that actually scared the crap out of me. What else? There's Ex Machina, probably one of my favorite sci-fi movies of the last 10, 15 years. And then, of course, most recently, they put out movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once, which won the Best Picture Oscar, I think deservedly. They also put out Moonlight, also won Best Picture Oscar. And then there's just a whole bunch of other films that I'm not mentioning. Bottom line is this. I think A24, with sort of the types of films that they choose to put out, the unique flavor to them, their unique style, I think it's a perfect marriage between them and sort of what Hideo Kojima tries to bring to the table in terms of innovation with gaming. One thing that should be mentioned, though, I wasn't actually sure about this until I looked into greater detail. Is this just going to be a direct adaptation of what happens in the video game, with what's his name from The Walking Dead playing Sam Bridges? What's his name? Do you know?
It's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to say
Norman Reedus.
That's from The Walking Dead, and he's one of my favorite actors as far as like pulp films kind of go. Not specifically for the Boondock Saints.
Yeah.
Because Boondog Saints, because I know there's Boondock and Boondog, and one's a cartoon and the other one's a gritty pulp,
right,
gun porn, gun, as in like you love guns and just guns and like action hero-y stuff with very little logic to it, not actual not that kind,
right.
The other kind used to reference that kind of stuff.
Yes, we understand. Yeah, but he's apparently, according to like the press release done by both Kojima Productions and A24, who are collaborating on this movie, it's not going to be a direct adaptation. It's just going to be a new story told within that universe. And personally, Syb, I'm all about that. Thank God. One thing that I really hope happens here is that while I do want Hideo Kojima to have, obviously, a creative consultant role, I want somebody to be brought in that will bring their own vision. Use the world set up by Hideo Kojima, but tell their own story within that world. I don't want his ego, because as much as I worship Hideo Kojima, the guy has an ego, and it does tend to override some of his better sensibilities. I don't want him to be too involved. I want it to sort of be what was hinted at, what was going to happen with the Metal Gear Solid movie, where Jordan Vogt Roberts, the guy who's attached to direct that movie, is sort of messaging with Hideo Kojima, getting his advice on stuff. But Hideo Kojima is mostly just hands off and just, he's only contacted if certain details need to be consistent between the game and the movie, that sort of thing. But at the moment, it was just announced. We don't have any news in regards to casting, any news in regards to directing. I'm happy about it. Again, I'd still want a Metal Gear Solid movie first or a TV show, but I'll take what I can get. It's more stuff in the mind of Hideo Kojima. Sad. Did you ever play Death Stranding? And what do you think about the prospect of a Death Stranding movie?
So I never played Death Stranding directly. I did watch a lot of people like do the walkthroughs of it, and I got in quite a lot of trouble for suggesting that it was going to be more of a head type game and not an action game, which people were really thinking that it would be a very high end like strategy / action game based off of kind of the Metal Gear stuff. And I kept saying, no, this is going to be it's very slow paced. It's not what you're thinking. I didn't mean that the players were slow. I meant literally the experience of the game is going to be slow, but yeah, I did also have a kind of a bad taste in my mouth from that experience, but it's not because of the game, obviously. It's because of just confusion and stuff and communication difficulties and misunderstandings. But the game itself is good, and he's a very brilliant writer. Sometimes that needs that, and I noticed this in a lot of his other games. It's like you do have to be very invested in them to get the plot. If you're just sitting down, there's lots of scenes that you could just plop down on a couch, watch somebody playing it, and you go, oh, that's very interesting. Strong character types, interesting concepts. But why is a clone fighting another clone who's a previous copy of a digital dream of a thing? That I kind of, you lost me at. And again, that's not Hideo Kojima. That's obviously just general Japanese story for you. It's like, why is the magical girls trying to fight the demons that turn them into magical girls, and why do they have guns? But oh my God, that action scene is one of the best action scenes in all of human history. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that there's obviously going to be a tiny itsy bitsy about of like, now you need to get into it, but that's also what makes it good, right? So I hope they find that perfect translational director or senior writer or something like that, because you need a little bit of that, right? You need a little bit of it. My Hero Academia, great story. Berserk, great story, but it doesn't make its transition to film unless you have that perfect director that could just really nail it, right?
Yeah.
Really make it just that's the thing, that's the spot, that's the thing that's awesome and cool and makes for those legendary shows like Akira. Akira's, they really nailed that transfer. Ghost in the Shell, the obviously the anime, the early one, they really nailed that. And that's hard to do because the script it can be so crazy,
dense,
and bizarre at times. But if you can nail it, and again, like all of the other cute ones, all of the like Howl's Moving Castle, that kind of stuff, it's like if you can nail it, and that's what they need, is they need this perfect like director / like communicator to come in and translate that just perfectly.
I thought of a perfect guy to do it. He won't do it, but I know the perfect guy to do it. Matt Reeves. He's the guy who directed Cloverfield. He directed the Batman, the most recent Batman movie. He dabbles in the weird and the dark very, very well. And I think he would be perfect for the source material. But unfortunately, he's sort of busy with the aforementioned Batman and other stuff with the DCU, so I don't think he'll do it. But yeah, somebody like that, I think. Yeah. So I'm all about it. Lots of great movies and TV shows are coming out in the near future, because it has been proven, especially in this past year with the adaptations like the aforementioned Last of Us, that great adaptations of video game material can happen, and they're just waiting to be exploited in all the best possible ways, and I hope Death Stranding is one of them. Anyway, Saib, I do got to go. We're unfortunately going to have to maybe do the thing that we were going to do last as a separate video next week, because I really got to go. But ladies and gentlemen, on that positive note, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Maximum News. Really appreciate it. We're not going to be back here on Monday or Tuesday next week because it's still going to be Christmas holidays. However, we are going to try and do one or two things to sort of cap off the year. We're not sure the exact dates, but it'll be sometime between the 27th and the 30th. Those 4 days. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to hit the like on this video. That helps us out a lot. Leave a comment if you have any thoughts, positive or negative, as long as it's expressed in a simple way. We want to hear from you. Put your thoughts in the comment section below. Saib, thanks as always, man. Love doing the show with you. Do you have anything you want to plug before we finish?
Nope, that's it. We're coming out with more stuff. We had a weird thing with the Zenless Zone Zero video. We tried to advertise it in a place, and I think we got a bunch of bots on it. So if you're wondering what's going on with that, I don't know. We're trying to figure it out. We might take it down and repost it. So yeah.
You guys could just find me on all the regular forms of social media, just at Max Derrat. I'll put a link to my stuff and any of the other relevant stuff for the channel in the description box below. Thanks, guys. And until we do this again next week, I want to remind you as always, well, not as always, I want to just say, actually first, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwezi Kwanzaa, Tip Top Tet, a solemn and dignified Ramadan. And finally, I want to give a special thanks to my God, our sponsor. And then I'm going to put it in an ad break here. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, guys, until next week when we do this again, I want to remind you, as always and as per usual, stay yellow.
Goodbye.